my name is Kendall Perez, and I'm a second-year graduate student in the Adult Education and Human Resource Development Master's Program here at JMU. The clip that you're going to be seeing today is the ending of one of the classes that I have been teaching with Mrs. Diane Strawbridge, which is the introductory course to the Human Resource Development minor program. During that class, I was able to teach the ADDIE model. So the specific class that you're going to see is the class that was dedicated to the development and implementation portions of the ADDIE model. Students are in their very first class of the HRD program. They're getting to know each other and they're getting to know the content from the very beginning. In the class, before the clip starts, I let them start off with a case study to remind them of the specific learning that we did in the last two classes. Then we get into lecture and discussion. What you're going to see is the final lecture portion and the concluding activity and summary of the course. Please enjoy. So if you think about it, this is a classroom training environment. So out of what I just said, what are techniques that you've seen used in this classroom this semester? Go ahead.
Definitely like the experimental methods. Like we literally just did a case study.
Exactly.
And games, we used to like open games.
Absolutely, icebreakers, for sure. Great job. What else have we done? Go ahead.
We had the lecture part, which is right here.
Absolutely, lecture. What else can you guys recall? What are we doing right now? Well, I'm trying to create a discussion, right? That's a part that's done. Good job. And Mrs. Strawbridge has done a lot in providing audio visuals, right? And I provided an audio visual today, right? So that may be something to pay attention to the rest of this class, and even in your other classes. What are techniques that work for you and for those around you? We're at a good stopping point. So I want you guys to take all of this information in. Do you guys have any questions right now? Do you need me to repeat anything? Go ahead.
I know that you mentioned that role playing usually doesn't really work for a lot of companies. Is that
Right.
super common to do now? Or?
So it's not that it doesn't work. It actually creates a very good, exactly. It creates a very good behavior model for employees, especially in conflict resolution and things like that. It's just so embarrassing. You know, so a lot of people don't want to be the person that gets up in front of people. And you have to be able to create a safe environment for role-playing to be able to be done correctly. Because if the persons that are chosen for the role-playing are taken up front, and they're very nervous, they're shy, maybe they have social anxieties, it's not going to work as well. So that's something to consider when using them. We good to move on? I need more than one head nod. All right, cool, awesome, thank you guys. So now we're going to go to computer-based learning. So that's on-demand learning. I've explained that on-demand learning is self-paced learning, right? So this is going to be the stuff that you do on your own without having an instructor. So from now on, I will not call it self-paced. You guys will have to know that on-demand is what that means. So the purpose of on-demand learning is that it creates a simulation of that one-to-one tutoring that is created by a supervisor or coworker working with a new employee. Your book says that 22% of formal learning hours are spent in on-demand learning, and I can tell you and almost promise you that that number is significantly larger now. But please know, when your book published this, it said that 22%, which is a huge number of learning hours already, is spent with self-paced learning. There are 3 approaches to CBT. There's computer-aided instruction, there's internet and intra-based training, and intelligent computer-assisted instruction. So let's go into what those mean. So computer-aided instruction is the kind of program that can range from electronic workbooks to read-only documents in PDF form. Using multimedia platforms when creating e-learnings can bring your trainings to life and engage your audience. You have to also consider engagement when creating e-learnings is very important because it's very easy to go through that compliance video and just click next when you see that button pop up, right? So you want to be able to create that engagement through multimedia devices. E-learnings usually use some kind of inter or intranet technology systems. So this helps create interactivity with its users. And it's also a very easy way of giving the same training to a mass amount of people. Does anyone know what intranet is? That's fine. I had to refresh myself when I was looking over this content. I'm always not that good at technology content, but it's something that we definitely need to know in our field. So intranet is a computer's internal network. So if you think about it, VMware, the company that I worked for, they had an intranet system where they were able to transmit all of the trainings that we needed all onto our computer in a very quick amount of time. Lastly, the third kind of CBT, which is my favorite, and it's becoming very, very popular right now, is intelligent computer-assisted instruction. So this is using artificial intelligence. This is pretty cool stuff. VMware was actually implementing this type of training when I left. So this is when a company uses artificial intelligence to measure an individual's learning expertise and their training knowledge. That creates and levels out and creates a specific training program for that person. So if you think about it on a very simplified level, when you guys came to JMU, you had to take pre-tests of math and a language, right? Yeah? So think about it that way. So you had to skip those easy levels if you knew a little too much, or you figured out the system and maybe you tested very low on purpose, right? So think about it that way, is that they have a pre-test that then determines what training path you take as a learner for the organization. I'm maybe a little more enthusiastic than you guys when it comes to that. So what's the advantages of on-demand learning? Like I mentioned earlier, it creates that one-on-one relationship, simulation of a supervisor or a trainer with that learner. They're able to, especially if you create interactive e-learnings, I know that we created role play with our sales employees through e-learnings. That creates that immediate learning and feedback that you would get with a one-on-one interaction and instruction. Next, it allows greater control over when and how the training is delivered. So you are able to choose by the minute when it's delivered. And a lot of the times, trainings will say, okay, you have a month to complete this program. It gives companies a leniency because, as we know, it's very hard. There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration when you're scheduling an in-person training program. These are things that you don't have to consider with on-demand learning because maybe they're between projects. Maybe they are waiting for their child to get out of soccer practice. They can go through that on-demand learning right on their tablet, right on their phone, right on their laptop, when the time is convenient to them. But as I mentioned before, it is very important to consider blended learning. So it's not always beneficial to use just classroom instruction. It's not always beneficial to use just on-the-job training. To be able to combine the three and use the characteristics under each of those training types will create the most learning retention for your learners possible. So, that was heavy. We just went through the development of a training program. There's a lot that can go into it, right? Now, you can pass it off to the trainers. We are into implementing the HRD program. So, you identified the need. You designed the training program. You developed the training program. And now it's time for the implementation of it. The implementation, like I just said, is handed off to the trainer. So the person that is most responsible for this part of the HRD program success is that person. But before you deliver the program, there are last-minute things that the trainer and the HRD professionals must consider. Record keeping. So we already have the employees that signed up for maybe the training, but you have to consider, how are you going to know who showed up and who didn't? How are you going to create accountability for those persons? If you have the time and if you have the luxury, pilot testing the training program. So using a smaller group of people, maybe it's a part of the department that you're already going to be training, you train those individuals a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time, and you see how well they are able to achieve those objectives. That would be a pilot test. You create backup plans. So, I don't know if you guys remember, but the first few weeks of this class, you guys were crickets. It was very hard to do icebreakers with you guys because no one would participate. So I had 3 icebreakers in the back of my mind when I come to this class to be like, okay, if they won't participate this time, what am I going to do this time? But that's things that you really have to consider with employees, especially if it's a group that doesn't know each other, doesn't have good rapport with each other. They're going to be a little bit more quiet. So backup plans are always good. What if the technology doesn't work, right? I had a training program where I started the training off with a video, the video wouldn't play. That was so embarrassing. But, you have to come up with backup plans and you have to understand how you're going to handle situations when they don't go exactly as you expect them to. Now, a lot of those can be taken care of during the pilot testing. Lastly, you have to consider the facilitation style. So, this goes directly onto trainee experience and knowledge. How much do these trainees know the knowledge that you're giving them, the information that you're giving them? If it's compliance related, they've heard it for the 5th time, you don't have to guide them through the information, right? Maybe it's a process that's completely new to the company and completely foreign to your learners. That's something you're going to have to guide them through a little more carefully. So you figured out those last considerations, and now we're on to the delivering of the HRD program. The very last thing that you have to do before the trainees come into that room is arrange the physical environment. So think about seating arrangements. So if there's a lot of group work that's going to be done, if there's a lot of collaboration, if that's what your whole training is based on, then you have to consider putting maybe the tables into groups. You have to consider maybe it's a very talkative group and you want to make sure that they're not going to be distracted by each other. Maybe you're going to put them in rows so that you don't have to worry about that. The comfort. So when you're thinking of comfort, if they're going to be on wooden stools all day, that's going to be a little difficult. But you also have to think of lighting. So if it's going to be bright in the room and open, the windows are open. Those are things that can affect the comfort of the learning environment. Next are the physical distractions. I'm just going to mention this to you guys. Have you noticed that clocks are never in the front of the classrooms? That's for a physical distraction. You guys, clocks are never in the front of the classrooms because then you guys are going to stare at it and be like, oh, we only got 5 more minutes. And then your mind's going to start wandering and you're going to say, oh, I wonder what they catered for lunch today. You know, those are the things that they try to avoid. So that's a physical distraction right there that is avoided by the arrangement of the class. Lastly, you have to consider materials that are available. So when you walked in, the video consent form and your activity sheet and the sign-in sheet are all at the front of the class. That's so that you guys are prepared as learners to start the class, and you have everything you need right there. Before the class started and I had you guys get into groups and use the big notepads, I had all of that laid out for you guys. Those are the types of things you have to make sure that the materials are prepared for your learners. So, you guys got through it. Thank goodness, right? I know that's a lot of stuff. We're just going to go over the summary. So we're just going to spitfire some questions. What are the 3 delivery methods for training? Go ahead.
On the job, classroom, and computer-based.
Absolutely, perfect. What are the 2 kinds of on-the-job training techniques? Go ahead.
Job instruction training and job rotation.
Perfect. Good job. What are the advantages and disadvantages of on-the-job training? Go ahead.
Advantages are immediate learning and low cost. And disadvantages are lack of control, possible damage, and just safety.
Absolutely. What are the 5 kinds of classroom training methods? Go ahead.
Lecture, discussion, audio-visual media, experiential methods, and computer-based training.
Perfect. And what are the advantages and disadvantages of classroom-based training? Go ahead.
The pros are prevents use of variety, the environment is controlled, it can accommodate a large group of attendees, and the cons are higher cost and then harder learning transfer.
Perfect. What are the 3 kinds of on-demand learning? Go ahead.
Computer-aided instruction, internet and internet-based training, and intelligent computer-assisted instruction.
Perfect. And what takes place during implementation? Go ahead.
It could just be like record keeping, or testing,
The training itself.
the training itself.
Yep. Implementation is when it actually happens, right? The things that you mentioned do happen during implementation. I promise you are right.
Okay.
Those are the details that you have to consider. But implementation was when the training actually takes place. All right, so as we all do, and I've created a habit now since it's number 3, I want you guys to pull out your cell phones and or grab out your computer. All right. So, those on the computer, go ahead to go to pollev.com/Kendall Perez 520. Those of you texting, text Kendall Perez 520 to 22333. What I would like you guys to do today is to ask one question that pertains to what you guys have learned thus far since I've been facilitating.
Just like ask a question about any lecture.
Yeah, well, that I was in charge of, yes. Yeah. I'm not asking you guys to, did I not explain that? Okay, so cons to on-demand learning. Let's see. So a con to on-demand learning would be if it's something that's process-oriented and you don't have the technology to allow them to practice it via the e-learning. That would be a reason that you wouldn't use on-demand learning. So you have to consider that there's a very specific type of learning that can be conducted during on-demand learnings and e-learnings. You're not always going to be able to fulfill each objective using just e-learnings. Good question. So the clip that you just saw was from the third class, which I taught the students about the development and implementation portions of the ADDIE model. The part that you just saw was at the ending of the class. So in the beginning, I asked the students to participate with groups and collaborate working on the case study. This case study is something that I created from scratch, and it was used to practice what they had previously learned the class before on the ADDIE model. This was how I used and was able to not only refresh their minds on the ADDIE model and what we were learning, but it also evaluated the learning and what they retained from the previous class. So once the clip was completed, I was able to continue allowing the students to send in their messages and text their questions to the Poll Everywhere app that you see in the very end. And I continued asking their questions. These questions ranged from clarifying some lectures to what it means to be an HRD professional. So thank you guys so much for all of your viewings, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video.